International Brangus Breeders Association. My name is Garrett Thomas and I'm the Director of Member Relations and International Promotion. And today we have the pleasure of visiting with Dr. Joseph Massey, the Executive Vice President of the IBBA. Why don't we get started with telling us just a little bit about contemporary groups and exactly what they mean and why they're so important.
Well, Garrett, contemporary groups are really important because we look at the genetic potential of how animals develop. And it's difficult for us to take an absolute value of an animal like a weaning weight. An animal weighs 600 pounds at your ranch on 207 days, and you go north 200 miles, or more importantly, maybe 500 miles, and it may wean 450 pounds for some reason that we don't know, and it's probably environment. So contemporary groups are important so that we can group animals and try to see how they perform in a specific environment and look at the differences of how these animals would perform. So we would take the average of a group of 5 to 10 animals, or however many there may be, and then we would say this animal ratioed out at 5% above average, or it could be below average. But one thing that becomes important in genetic potential is if I move it to any other location, and if I could take those same 10 or 20 animals, they ought to ratio the same. Sure, they could be off a point or two, but an animal that's 5% superior in one location ought to be about 5% superior in another location.
Okay, that makes good sense. Can you tell us maybe how many animals we need to have to make a contemporary group, and does the sex of the individual play a role at all in that?
Well, yeah, obviously the more animals in a contemporary group, the more valuable the information becomes and the more accurate. But a contemporary group can consist as little as 2 animals. We've got to have a difference. So if you have 2 animals, you have an average, and one's above and one's below. But having 10 gives you a better average and a better understanding. And then the other thing that becomes more important is if you could have multiple contemporary groups. That's when you really become informative. And what do I mean by multiple contemporary groups? Well, you could have more than one sire represented in a contemporary group. So you could have 2 sires, 2 different contemporary groups.
Okay. And in terms of days, how long can a contemporary group be? And say for example, my calving season in the spring is 80 days, and in the fall it's 105 days. How does that play into the contemporary groups? Well,
contemporary groups are I also failed to mention, they ought to be the same sex, because bull calves are going to develop at a different rate than the females, and so that's the first thing I want to tell you. But the other thing that happens is that we look at a time frame, because developmentally it's not reasonable to think that a 90-day-old calf is going to grow at the same rate as a 5-month-old calf or a 6-month-old calf. So the reason for having a time frame is to keep them as tight as possible within a developmental stage. And usually they're 90 days. And it's not only developmental as far as that animal is concerned, but we forget that environments change in 90 days. We could be in winter or go from snow to spring, depending on that time frame. So that becomes important as well.
Yeah, you say like if somebody has a longer calving season than 90 days, tell us what happens whenever that happens.
Well, when you start looking at the data, generally what the accepted standard, if it goes out of 90 days, it's going to automatically break it into 2 contemporary groups. And it needs to be that way because, again, it goes back to the principles that I said. If it's 120 days different in age, it's not reasonable to do that comparison.
Absolutely. Well, that's about all the time we have here. We hope that has been informative for you about contemporary groups. And if you have any questions, feel free to contact us here at the office. Thank you.